Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Lorenzo. I send the wrong link out, I think, to everybody. I sent a
Uh, yeah,
link.
do you want me to forward the correct one?
Could you do that? My
Yeah,
fault.
yeah, sure.
I was just about to do that myself. We can both do it.
yeah,
Could you do that? That'd be brilliant.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, stupid.
Um, Apologies, I disappeared at some point.
That's all
I
right. Don't
I am
worry.
taking uh, I'm exhausted. I also screwed up quite a few important things really badly and
How are you doing? How are things?
are terrible. uh, like terrible in the sense that I'm just overworked at the moment, and then I missed an important deadline for extending my fellowship, so I can't extend it anymore. Life with you, yeah, it's just I was just overwhelmed with too much stuff. I tried to ask whether they could extend the deadline. They were like, no, that's it. So I'm paying the price of it now, and so I'm not in a great mood, but.
Oh well, I'll try and cheer you up a bit. I mean, it is just tough. I think we're all just tired, apart from anything else,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, it's just that with deadlines, that doesn't matter somehow, right?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, people are understanding, but institutions and
Well, the trouble is that, yes, as you say, some
fairness,
things
yeah,
are very unforgiving.
yeah. And so, like, even before then, I just disappeared because I had just too much to do. But thank you very much for sending the paper, and congratulations for the brilliant comments you received.
Well, I mean, it was in the end, I just put a few days work on it. I just looked at it and thought, there's a good paper in here. We just kind of, and can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, can we either, really? So,
Sure. The problem is that uh, the nature of these papers is such that everybody's contributing with their own style and thoughts and so on. And what is really missing is one person that just goes through it all and just makes something that is coherent out of it.
yeah,
And it's a tough job. And
yeah,
um,
yeah.
Glenn is doing the same
So
job.
listen, I mean, are you just under massive pressure for continued modeling work all the time? Do you have all these urgent operational requests to do yet more modeling, yet more modeling?
Yeah, fundamentally yes, but also it's just people around me sometimes need they need some they have they try something and it's kind of technically very difficult, and so they try the best they can,
Yeah.
but everything done like this in a hurry is problematic. So then I try to support them, but it just takes time. And if you're tired and the code doesn't work, and then you try to correct the code, and then you need more theory, and then you need to write the theory, explain it to someone else, and anything that is more theoretical and done carefully just takes so much time.
It's an interesting point. It's kind of something in there about the human resource implications. I mean, it's kind of nascent there in some of the discussion in our paper, but it doesn't really capture the lived experience of lots of people I know who are trying to kind of use data models, their expertise. Everybody's just exhausted in this kind of context. Interesting.
Yeah, well, the model I'm using for the medium term projections and the estimates of the reproduction number every week, it's still the old one I had.
Yeah, right.
Like I wanted to extend it to age stratification, apart from the fact that it's very difficult because there is limited information about interaction between ages. Like there are all the age classes, like the polymorph studies and stuff like that, but they are not during the pandemic. You don't know how the lockdown affects these things. You can make assumptions and so on. You can be reasonable, but ultimately the collecting data on these things takes longer than you have for responding. And the models are just a lot more complicated. So we try to work on a model that has age structure, and has also the care home structure, because obviously care homes are important. And I didn't have any bandwidth. We had money for a postdoc, so we employed a postdoc, but that postdoc doesn't have much epidemiological expertise. And so we ended up, like, the idea was to help with the roadmap, but the model is not there yet. And partly is because I couldn't follow it, but also partly because the postdoc obviously can't make decisions, expert decisions by themselves. And
Indeed.
and
Okay.
so-
Well, look. Let's try and get
let's talk about
one
this.
thing off your plate, anyway.
Yeah.
Our plate, collective plates. Thanks, everybody. I realise that some people are on holiday and other people have other commitments. So I just wanted to get as many of us as possible together to have a quick review of where we are. Hopefully, you've had a chance to kind of digest comments. Actually, one thing might be quite useful, and is just, I mean, Valerie, thank you for joining the call, is just to get a sense of, before we rush into what next, just to get a sense of where papers are and your sense of what people are doing in revisions, etc., etc. You know, how much the balance of between, you know, putting even lots more effort into this as opposed to, you know, tuning it and just kind of submitting it. So yeah, might have just asked for your kind of reflections on what you're seeing in other papers overall. Yeah,
I guess about half the papers now have been submitted,
right,
and we're just, you know, therefore waiting for referees' comments on those. The amount of effort in revision, I mean, it's really what Lorenzo was saying, that it's so difficult writing one of these papers with a big team of people who all got limited time and will work very hard on a particular bit, but don't have in general the time to sort of put everything together and really read the whole thing and make sure it all coheres properly. So I think that's the issue. But I mean, people have been putting a lot of effort into that too. But I think, I mean, at some point, you might just as well submit it, because you're going to get more referees' comments. And, you know, the revisions that we're all doing now aren't necessarily the last ones. And, you know, on this particular paper, that Hans's comments were very, very positive. So, you know, as long as you're all happy with it, I just get it submitted. And
okay, all right, well, let's just,
you know, you've got time to read it again, and do a few other tweaks, you know, at the final form that gets published. So
okay, thanks very much for that. Yeah, I agree. Also, there's the question that was posed to us, as you know, who would we send this out to review to as well, which is kind of who would we suggest as nominated reviewers. I think that could be quite a consequential discussion. So let's just I've got an hour for this. Perhaps not all of you do, but we'll just sweep round the table and then come back to the main discussion on what we how we move forward. Lorenzo,
just to support what Valerie was saying, I just managed to look through the comments just before the meeting, and the impression I have is that one of the written comments, I now don't remember the names anymore, but one of the person that had a very, very detailed comment throughout,
Alessandra,
Sandra, her comment was very much like, oh, I don't think you should name FAIR among the challenges. That means the challenges are more like how do you use the data in a pandemic, which kind of is what it would have caused a huge overlap with the estimation paper, in my opinion. So when I started participating to this, I joined the estimation paper, and then I just attended the data just to make sure that we were saying different things. And then since then I got roped into the data. But so while Alexandra's comments were like, I think you should stress more like how the data is used in a pandemic, which basically means estimation to a large extent. Hans's comments seemed more in the direction of, yeah, the estimation is the usual problem, but I was very interested in the second part of the paper, which was very different. And so it's basically at this point, different reviewers respond with whatever their interests are and what they find newer, which is a way of complicated way of saying that Valerie is right. At some point, basically, it's a decision.
Of course.
It's a decision on the style and on what you want to talk about, and people that are more used to one bit, they find the other more interesting, and so different people just find different things more interesting. That's all.
But also it's a package of papers, and we have, as you say, made a lot of effort to try and keep the overlaps to a minimum. And somebody who is just reading one of the papers hasn't seen those surrounding things and realized what's going on elsewhere. So I think, I mean, Hans has, and one or two other people have, but I think that's also something to clearly be borne in mind.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I mean, I when I was reading Alejandra's comments, my feeling was, well, maybe she just isn't, I think they're all valid, to be honest, but I felt that maybe she wasn't the audience for this paper, and that perhaps some of the, actually expanding on the fair data principles is quite valid for the audience that we're trying to reach. So
Thank you. Yeah, Richard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm essentially agreeing. I think that, I mean, having talked to Alejandra quite a bit over the last few months and not knowing her before, she's been just totally baffled by the fact that we're not just totally on board with all the fair data principles, and we don't already have this all totally sewn up. And so she's coming at this paper from that angle. But I did think there were things that she was suggesting adding. I mean, if we don't mind the paper getting bigger, that were valuable. But I didn't think that her idea of taking away the fair stuff was right.
Okay, so that's quite helpful, because I mean, I think if there was a kind of consensus that we had to do a deep restructure, that would be quite, well, that'd be a lot more work, quite problematic, I think. And I can see why she would think that from her perspective. Yeah. By the way, I was very grateful for just clearly the sheer amount of time she'd taken over drawing up those comments. So that was good. Yeah, I think the issue about what we might add in. I mean, I thought everybody would say this is impossibly long. I mean, I think Ben thought it was a bit long, etc., but nobody was saying this must be cut in half. So actually, I think maybe a number of papers have grown substantially, and as a package of papers, I think our view, we should be comforted by the fact that it's speaking about issues that a lot of people at the front line of modeling it in epidemiology and other aspects of infectious diseases kind of hear about, but haven't really had time to kind of ingest or incorporate, or in some cases haven't heard about. So that's the other surprising thing. So I think it is. All right. So if people are content, then perhaps what we would do is just get your interpretation. I think the person that I was I'm particularly keen to hear from was Hans Hestebeck, and he's made some quite detailed comments in the first half of the paper where he's clearly got more awareness of what's going on, and I could do with a little bit of guidance as to decode his concern, his comments, because perhaps they're all obvious. I think they were quite subtle, actually, and they're quite important points, but I'm not sure I've fully grasped. Anybody else want to make any more general points on that? Because I think my view is that we take the structure that we have, which seems to have served us quite well. Frank Kelly has read a lot of this stuff over the years, and he was pretty content with it. Ben obviously wanted something kind of a bit more clarification around the section he was content with. And who knows what the ultimate reviewers might make of this. We'll come on to that perhaps towards the end. People content if we just perhaps spend a minute looking at Hans's comments. If people have had a chance to do that.
I'm sorry, where's the best place to see these? I mean, I read them before, but now I've lost them.
Sorry, actually, I sent the email I sent. I attached his paper. Right. Yeah, I attached his paper as, I think it was the first attachment in that. And
I've never understood how people read these Post-it note comments in PDFs. I just find them an absolute nightmare. I click on them and then I zoom 3 pages up and then they disappear.
They're very dependent on software, that's for sure. Yeah, not all software does a good job. Sorry about that. And I did send him a PDF. I did convert this into LaTeX, as you'll see. I couldn't bear working in Word anymore. I was certainly found it aesthetically and technically offensive. So
Richard, what operating system do you have? Yeah, so don't use Mac Viewer. If you download, what's his name? Adobe
Acrobat.
Acrobat.
Oh God!
And
I've
you open
been-
it in Adobe Acrobat, you have them on the right-hand side. And
Yeah,
the
some
way,
people-
Yeah,
I
it
thought
actually
somebody
works
was probably
quite
going to
well.
say that. I've just had it with this kind of Adobe virus
I
approach.
know. I knew you were going to get that. And I kind of completely sympathise as well, because it is, you know, it is weird how this bizarre format has come to dominate the world and the providers. But that is a place to look. Look, let me. What I'll do, I'm happy to extract and cut and paste. Have people got some access to these comments, so we can just.
Yeah.
There are about 5 substantive comments in line in the paper, and let's. And in fact, to some extent, so did you actually find the post-it note comments at all, Richard, as a matter of fact?
Yeah, I mean, I could read some of them, but some of them, when I click on
Okay.
them, I just disappear to a different part of the document.
Okay.
So I just
So-
can't
so-
read them all.
So the point he makes is that he mostly reflects on the first half of the paper, and the way we're phrasing the challenges. You know, in some cases, it is the case that some of our recommendations come at the end. The issue about concreteness of the recommendations, what exactly the challenge is as it relates to the recommendation, making it a reality. So that, I think the question there was, how can ideas from us, people are data experts like you, help to realize the recommendations? So he was talking about the SARS-1 EU project, the lack of modeling skills, difficult to produce publications that would be actually around issues of authorship roles and recognition. Actually, it seemed to be a lot about the sociology of team interaction, privacy issues, I suppose the suggestion there was that he was feeling, were the recommendations such that they could materialize in the lived experience of scientists using this stuff going forward, and perhaps they appeared too generic? I don't know. What do people, is that what people took from that first generic comment?
I took it, Nigel, that he was kind of a nice way. He was implying that it can be a bit facile to just have a recommendation, and that the real meat that we could provide was in unpacking the challenge more.
Yeah. Okay. What we're going to have to clearly do is, if we can collectively make some notes from this group as to how you would address these major comments, just generically, that will help me a lot. I think that would be very helpful. Yeah, thanks, Ian. Any other comments on that? And his second comment on page 2 is all about all sorts of data needs of models, increasing all the time. And this is perhaps to some of the issues that Lorenzo has been touching on, whether you've got a compartmental stratified model, blah, blah, blah. We address some of these well, he says. In some areas, the models are looking for data. And he said the other direction is data looking for models. And I suppose it's this idea that there's a lot of data coming through so-called happenstance data that's not on the immediate list of things that current model parameterizations demand. But how do you think about, you know, extending or having the flow the other way? Now, that's quite an interesting thought, and how receptive the community is to that. But what do people think about that comment generally? I think we have talked about it, I think, somewhat, Lorenzo, haven't we? Has Lorenzo had to drop off? No, he's there. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. You're muted. If you're making a comment,
I wasn't, because you didn't make a question apart from where is Lorenzo. Did you have any question in particular?
Well, the question is this question around his second comment, which is that we address a lot, you know, whether the data is fit for the classes of models we've got at our disposal. But the other way around of looking at this is to say we have new data assets, and do we have models capable of ingesting it? Does that, you know, is that a reasonable way to go? If you like, a data-driven model that says, look, you've got data now that, if the models could incorporate, could actually help enrich or inform or extend the models.
I'm probably the wrong person to address this question then, because I'm sitting comfortably in the modeling
I know you are.
That
I know
looks
you
for the
are. But you
data.
must be capable of imagining them. What the word looked like if it was the other way around.
I mean, I suppose to some extent the data model policy lifecycle
Address some of that.
is trying to address that, and maybe we need to sort of like revisit that text and make sure that we're making that point. Because I mean, I think it is a very good point. And I mean, it's also true, I think, that modelers have taken on a lot of data in the current pandemic that they might not have done, 5 years ago. So.
I mean, we do have a concrete example we could draw on from SCRC, in that right at the beginning, when we were trying to envisage what structures we wanted, we had the dream, because it stayed a bit of a dream, of the kind of the data broker, that the modelers would be basically were doing their thing and needed to understand a bit of the data. But equally, they needed data specialists who understood the data domain, but then also had links into the modeling, because that way we would get the most value. And to some extent, we achieved it by bringing in people like Ruth and Das, who had a very different experience of, she's an expert in various aspects of socioeconomic medical data. So that actually meant that I think we did a much better job of bringing some of those data resources into SCRC. But the actual original vision was actually much more ambitious and expansive, and I failed on it, mainly because we actually just couldn't find people with the skills and time to actually engage with broader data domains. But that might be, I mean, that's how we envisaged trying to deal with it, and we did get somewhere down the road.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's good. I mean, I think also, I think Glenn's point about it is there in a sense in the life cycle. I mean, that is part of the reason for adopting that iterative process, isn't it? Yeah.
I might add something. Rereading the comment, it sounds like Hans, the way Hans is phrasing it is actually something that we have, as modelers, we have been asked many times, but I don't think we've ever really properly addressed, which is, what data do you need? What do you want me to collect? I could collect data. I could give you some data. I just don't know whether this set of data is better than that other set of data. And I somehow hear this question a lot. I think a lot about this, but the only way to kind of show that some data is better than other data is to actually, I don't know, show what you can estimate or how well you can estimate it with certain data compared to other data that is maybe more easily collectible. But that requires time, and it's not something you do in an emergency in general. Also because it's a lot of work, and then maybe the data you're hoping for cannot be collected for any logistical reasons, so you don't. So in the end, the attitude is always like, the attitude is always to kind of get an understanding of what data could be collectible in practice, and then just try to use that in the best way possible. But there is not much done in terms of if you collect that data, that it would be better. With the only exception, with a couple of exceptions, in particular, I know Eben Kenner has been working quite a lot on this in the past, in past meetings in Oberwolfach with Valerie. And Valerie certainly remembers discussions of, for example, when the genetic information is really adding something to the epidemiological information, and the answer is that it does add something. The general answer, I think, is that it does add something. But if your epidemiological information, for example, doesn't have any information about the household size, then you should probably first collect information about the household size. Otherwise, you can't estimate transmission if you don't have the denominator. If you only know who gets infected but not who could have gotten infected, then you can't estimate transmission. And the genetic information doesn't really add much more if you don't have this extra information in addition. So there are people that have thought a little bit about it, but no one has actually done something extensive or robust in that.
If you could just jot a note down and bang that over to me, that would be great. That's a good, quite nice example though. And I think we can think about how we can more clearly signpost that issue in the second half of the paper, actually, or foreground it as we're discussing it in the earlier part where he's picked it up. His other point is actually a fair point, I think, which is that we don't really haven't really done our due diligence, or I haven't, on the previous challenges issue. And he says that actually, while some of these will actually be covered in the estimation paper, and that, that was quite useful to see the estimation paper emerging as well at the same time. There are some issues that relate back, and I guess, Valerie, are they looking for some quite substantive references back into those original papers? That would be
Oh, in an ideal world, but this is there were a lot of papers and they were substantial. I think in general, if one can say, I mean, well, not to repeat stuff that was said there, in any detail, but try to indicate what sort of things are still outstanding.
He says the 4 most relevant papers in the 2015 issue. Is that a definite reference to the 4 most relevant? That is, are they just 4 of one, or does he mean an upper bound of 4? I wasn't quite sure what that was. We could ask him. We could just ask him.
I'm sorry, I haven't found the foremost yet. Statistical data analysis.
Yeah, well, I think
he means that there are about 4 papers that are in that section that are particularly relevant.
Yeah.
And I think what he's been asking across all the papers really is about what's still outstanding, what's been achieved, what references to recent work where those challenges have been dealt with, and what are outstanding. But I don't think, we can't do this in any detail. So if one can say a few sentences to put this in the context of those papers, that would be useful.
Yeah. Okay.
I know many of you know this already, but just for Nigel and a few others that are not involved in other challenges. But this is one of the common comment that Hans has made pretty much everywhere. It's one of his standard to-go comment. So it's not only this paper. Every other paper was a bit like that.
Yes, indeed. But I think we have to sort of address it a bit. But of course, other referees, I mean, the referees, the former referees, won't have been so involved in that 2015 volume and won't have quite such a personal interest in it as Hans.
I mean, the 4 papers he's referring to, one is 8 challenges for phylogenetic inference, which we could probably...
Sorry, Glenn, sorry.
One is 8 challenges in phylogenetic inference, which I guess we could probably largely ignore because I think that's been covered in the estimation. One is 6 challenges in measuring contact networks, which I guess might be relevant.
Yeah.
One is 7 challenges for model-driven data collection in experimental and observational studies. So that might be worth a look at for the life cycle part. And then the last one is, well, this is in no particular order, but the last one is one by Danny DeAngeligis and others on infectious disease modeling using data from multiple sources, which I guess could be relevant. So my rough estimate is that there are 2 or 3 there that we might want to have a look at a bit more.
Yeah.
Nigel, the papers they're in the Dropbox.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Yes, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I have to say, I've been a bit remiss on not.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure you knew where they were easily accessible.
So in that sense, they are paper 16, 17, 18, and 19.
I mean, if you want, I could just put those 4 papers in the data challenge.
Yeah, just put them there. Just all link them across.
The thing I always found difficult was finding the ones I want.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Just plowing through if we can. I think he makes a comment in beginning of section 3 on our claim, our kind of, self-evident claim that data is crucial when modeling pandemics. Yes and no, he says. I don't know that is a thing that we particularly need. I couldn't see exactly how to get round to addressing his yeah, yes and no comment there. Does anybody find a way to concretize his? I just don't. I think I didn't find that one gave me a sense of, well, we need to change this. Particularly, I mean, it's a platitude on the one hand, but there again, the paper's going to have to contain that, I'd have thought.
It's just opening the
Yes, that's all it is. It's a device, rhetorical device. Yeah. Yeah. This following comment, though, on page 5 is around the polymod models, and that's possibly because having a discussion around the deficiencies or issues around pre-pandemic contact surveys, and yeah, I think he's. Do we need such data for a wider range of populations? Almost certainly. I can't unpack. You'll know what weird is. Does Western economic? What does weird populations mean? Is it countries like us or something? Or
I've never seen it before.
Yeah.
No idea.
Yeah.
I think it just means some specific subpopulations, right? I don't know, like care homes members.
Oh, weird populations. I didn't.
Weird
Okay, I get it.
I think, but I could be wrong.
All right.
I haven't seen that acronym before.
No.
I also know that if we had data on some specific subpopulations, we would understand things a little bit better. In particular, care home,
Prisons, that kind of thing.
nursing stuff, or how they interact outside and inside of the care home, how they agency workers that move from one care home to the next. These are things that have been really challenging to capture, and we have basically no idea.
Really interesting. That's a really interesting
So I
point.
think weird means just very specific and not something you would have thought of before.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my interpretation. I could be wrong.
I think you might be right, Nigel, that it's got some meaning. Yeah, Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic.
There you go. There you go. It's a new one.
I've not heard of it before, but
We've all learnt something.
I think that's really fascinating. Yeah, well, that's true, but also I suspect, and I think Lorenzo's point's true as well. I mean, both within, yeah, what other populations look like. Yeah, I think we can
I
perhaps
still feel that if you had known these things, it would have been easier to respond to a pandemic in the UK rather than having more information about other industrialized countries. But that obviously depends on the scale you're looking at.
Yeah.
And it was a bit not PC enough for Hans to say weird populations, like very specific ones. Like we are a weird population, right? Modelers and like academics are a bit weird.
Yeah.
Everybody can argue on what weird is.
in what sense?
In both respects.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call myself normal. That's the point.
I was wondering though, and since the second half of his comments was kind of pointing at, again, a slightly wider issue. And again, apologies because I haven't really. I need to basically. I recognize just need to sit and read the whole paper, but in a kind of an integrative fashion. But I mean, is there text anywhere about this kind of applicability issue? Because I mean, he's raising it specifically for polymod, but it is of course a general.
Yeah, I think he is. I think that's the point he's making. Yeah, I think it's a general point. And he also makes the point later, his final substantive comment is around the whole issue about data we might wish to collect, we could need in the future, anticipating privacy issues that come along with that data. How would you do that? He felt there was a whole set of challenges surrounding extending current practice that rather than there's some quite specific recommendations in section 3.3, but again it's worth kind of just checking in on that and making sure we haven't lost that point. Again, it's a really interesting point. Whilst people talk extensively about the value of happenstance data, new kinds of data that are coming in, like the genomic data, the extent to which we really have, and I suppose it relates to things like where our contact matrices data comes from and all the rest of it. An enumeration of a substantial list of new and emerging data sets. That's not I mean, that's something that one might be able to kind of assemble or tabulate. Could be quite interesting. You know, different modalities of that data, whether it's geospatial, whether it's socio-demographic, whether it's actually other kind of medical data. I mean, again, you know, the thing that was being striking is the extent to which the actual admissions data into hospitalization has turned out to be really crucial data for all sorts of reasons after the fact. Lorenzo.
This goes somewhat back to what we were discussing before. I mean, my memory is very short, but I think when we were writing it, we were trying to shy away exactly from this because it sounded like we were compiling a list that wasn't really representing a challenge. Yeah. We were just listing stuff, and it was very UK centric in that sense. Having said that, because that's one thing for why I don't think we did exactly that in the first place, and now you're suggesting doing that, so I'm just checking whether we want to do it.
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm just putting it out there. I mean, I'm not sure. This is to discuss the kind of comments and what we do about it, and we've only got about 20 minutes left. We need to kind of get onto that. Hans had a reasonably extensive set of comments compared to Frank's.
The other issue is that it's very hard to get complete on that sort of data, right? No one has enough expertise to cover all of the data that has ever come out in the pandemic and been used. Certainly, there were comments that we have missed data on wastewater, and then Hans was talking about collecting data on behavior. Yeah. And now that I think about it, I'm sure the SPI-B, which is the behavior equivalent of SPI-M, which is the modeling group, has certainly conducted a huge amount of surveys, if not to measure behavior, at least to measure intentions. Yeah. But then you enter into Lucy Yardley would be a person that certainly knows about it. And I maybe approach her and ask her. But the problem you have with all these kind of surveys is that the way you phrase the question cause very different results. If you say, have you isolated as you should have? People are going to say, yes, I have, even if they've gone shopping during their isolation period. If you start your question by saying full isolation is just extremely difficult, and it's very common for people to actually nip out 1 or 2 times. So, has that happened to you? Then it's a completely different way of phrasing the same question, and is going to be met with a different answer. So questions on behavior are just very, very subtle.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know. But actually, that's a great example. The wastewater one. I just it's obviously become quite an important one, and could imagine in a lot of contexts that would crop up again. The point about behavioural proxies is the point he makes in his final comment as well. You know, so maybe some thought to that.
What I mean is that in the UK, there has been a lot of data collected on behavior, and Hans seems to be like, should we collect data on behavior? And I'm like, we have in the UK.
Then we might try and pull a sentence or two on that in. Okay.
And I know very little about it.
Yeah. All right. I just looking at Frank's comments now, if we could just briefly move on to those. Frank, you know, didn't I asked him specifically to say, tell me what to chop, and he couldn't. So he didn't feel we should. So which was interesting. So it was, he said, that's why I said it wasn't very helpful. I spoke to him about this as well. He did think the stuff around emergent happenstance data, mobility data is important. The section he did pull us out to, I'd be interested in Ian's thoughts on this, is this whole idea. He liked the fact we were segmenting out data roles. He's got a very baleful view about the lack of analytical ability in civil service and politics. And I think that might have been talked about a bit in science policy paper. And he's kind of, he says this is a whole paper in its own right. I don't know whether there's more we could say in a pointed fashion, Ian, on that kind of general topic, because you live that experience, I guess, to a certain extent through your responses in.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. So there's probably a lot we could say, because I mean, it's true. I mean, at different levels. At one level, there's the lack of the informed customer that is just really classic way of describing it. That often at such a low base, there's a lack of understanding even in their ability to kind of commission anything sensible. And because if you wanted to really go deep in some of this, there's just a general lack of ability to process and to make use of things. I've got to be I'm slightly conflicted though, because obviously in Scotland, the people that we most kind of were dealing with, and they put the Chief Statistician for Scotland in charge of the modelling work, and for various reasons, I'm not desperately keen to basically start dissing what I thought about the response from them. It's politically slightly difficult, to be honest, but I mean, we could look at it and see what else we can say. Certainly, we could go down the I think the uninformed customer route might be quite a nice one to run with.
Yeah, that might be a way to frame it. That isn't quite so. And the fact that if you're uninformed to the customer, you don't know what to commission as accurately as you perhaps should as well. That might be something. Yeah.
I mean, to put it on a fair point, what was very obvious was, some of the people that knew what they were doing, but there were other people that were being pulled in on secondment into the group who really didn't know what they were doing at all.
Yeah, Valerie. Yeah.
Well, I was only thinking that in ways of framing it, we're not necessarily just writing about UK experience. It's supposed to be wider than that, and so one can perhaps say, what it would be nice to have in terms of expertise and so on, without necessarily pointing the finger and saying, and they haven't got it. But perhaps there's a way of framing this.
Yes, no, that's a good idea.
Remembering that the international thing makes it perhaps easier to frame that.
Well, I mean, there's some things we could say positively from the UK side as well, actually, in that, for example, obviously there is there is the Government Statistical Service, and that actually it was very sensible of the Scottish Government to pull them in to actually kind of trying to coordinate some of the modelling activities. Of all the options they had, it was certainly one of the better ones. So I mean, there's things we can say that things can be better, but
okay.
Some of the steps that were taken weren't too bad. So yeah, okay, we can have a
if
think.
you could provide some additional text. I mean, the minimum, but the most pungent that might kind of address that issue. That'd be good. Yeah.
Right, we'll do.
That'd be great. Thank you. I'm just looking now where we are. I would take Ben Goldacre's comments are just at face value and include that additional observation he makes around when discussing home safely. I think that's a fair point, that he's kind of really seen it from that point of view. I would like to discuss Alejandra's because I mean, as Richard says, I don't think we're looking at the restructure or indeed dropping the section she thinks might be plainly self-evident or not needing so much attention, because that is going across quite well. But she does make quite a lot of additional comments, recommendations about reframing, recommendations, for example, etc. Richard, I mean, what's your thought about? I mean, again, what did you pick out as being? I mean, she got some good references of other papers to reference as well. What's the kind of stuff that you would think we really should include because it would materially strengthen the paper? Richard, you're muted, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, trying to find files and unmute myself. Yeah, okay, so obviously her main suggestion was dropping the section that we're not going to drop. So but I just felt like she was, I mean, to be honest, I just felt like she had a lot of context that she knew about from her background. I mean, throughout the paper, I mean, she had quite a lot of recommendations of individual things that could be added in, and I mean, I just thought broadly they were mostly good good suggestions. I didn't think there wasn't anything hugely. I mean, there's nothing individual that I would pick out. I mean, there were a couple of things where she where she, put in definitions of things and stuff like that. But it was more a, so there was a PDF where she had, there was a Word document she sent, and then there was a PDF explaining what she thought ought to happen. Those are the two things that she sent. So the Word document was basically just was some kind of fairly minor edits to the text itself, which could easily be incorporated, I think. And then the PDF is what Nigel sent round.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so it was really just the fact that she's obviously thought about this for a long time, and she was trying to flesh out exactly what the recommendation should be in different contexts and things like that, and they just, I mean, all of them looked quite sensible, was my feeling. And so could be, I mean, she'd done most of the work for us, to be honest.
Yeah, she had, in fact. Yeah, she had, in fact. Yeah. Okay, listen. I think the question that confronts us is how we wrap these extensions in, and the other important question is who we think might be appropriate reviewers. That's a question that I'd welcome views on before we depart. What I'm going to suggest is if colleagues could send through just brief written summaries of observations, any additional text that might help in the light of these, I will wrap those in. I'm going to go through Alejandra's comments and see whether they're actually, some of her recommendations have kind of actually crisped up some of the. I think they've addressed some of what Hansa's concerns were about, materializing the challenges in a way. I don't want us to spend hugely more time on this. I mean, actually, I'm about to enter. I think we've all got other things to do and holidays to embrace. So my view is that if we can think about reviewers for this, we might do another iteration. There's one or two comments you variously made to me about mistakes in affiliations or additions to affiliations, that kind of thing, that I'll wrap in as well. And then I'd like to get things submitted, frankly. So can we think about, sorry, Richard, you want to say?
Oh, well, I was just going to say that from the point of view of Alejandra's edits, I think she'd be quite happy to make them, because, I mean, if we wanted to include her in this, then she could go through and make, I mean, if we said, don't take out the section on fair data, but could you incorporate the other changes that you're proposing, then I think she'd be very happy to do that.
Okay, let me have a look at those in more detail and take a view on that, if that's all right. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, thank you. Right, reviewers. I do need a sense. I suppose I would just ask Valerie. We've got a challenge here in that reviewers aren't all going to rely on pure epidemiology. Do they have to be card-carrying epidemiologists, or are we going to be able to reference people from our own world? Yeah,
I think ideally the journal would need to get a range of reviewers from both, from across the spectrum, really. And if you can suggest, I mean, for us guest editors, it's easier to know about possible reviewers from the epidemics modeling end of things. So it'd be really good to have some suggestions from the more data oriented.
So if I might just add, I mean, Lorenzo, let me just go around the table on that. Without just kind of, who might be a good pair of eyes to put over this, fair, balanced, all the rest of it, but also represents, I mean, I think your case, you're carrying a modeling interest. So we're going to have somebody from the modeling world, and then we'll kind of try and cover off on the other topics, or a couple of names. While you're thinking about it, I could ask other people.
Do I have to come up with names now?
No. But I was wondering if people can. No, it's just that now is the opportunity, you know.
Because all the papers have so many co-authors in general, it's proving quite
I
difficult
can
to
imagine.
find referees that don't have a conflict of interest with somebody. So, you know, the more suggestions you can come up with, the better.
And we just burnt 4.
Well, we have more than that. No. Just give me a bunch. I mean, because
No. I mean, we have already burnt 4 potential reviewers by asking them for
Well,
comments.
exactly. Yes.
To review, but not act as reviewers.
yeah, I know. Well, let me see if other Ian. What about the world of policy and your world? Anybody spring to mind? You're muted.
So I mean, basically, maybe I went down the wrong track. My initial thought was to start thinking whether there was anybody in Europe I could think of who actually was familiar with the kind of the animal epidemiology data kind of policy interface thing. So obviously it has to be animals because that's the area that I know most. So the person that occurred to me was somebody called Gerdien van Schaik. She's moved. She actually is in charge of one of the Netherlands have got a very strange animal health kind of setup. So basically, she's moved from various universities, and now she's in charge of the kind of the cooperative animal health governmental interface side of things. She's also leading a big EU Horizon Europe project exactly on data integration for animal disease.
Can you pop a name into the chat? That would be good. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that'd be great. Richard.
I don't have any amazing suggestions, to be honest. I mean, because I'm neither a data person nor an epidemiologist. I kind of stumbled into this thing. So yeah, it's
I think
I will have a think, but I'm not sure. I mean, you know, Alejandra was the person that I thought of, but she was a bit too close to be a reviewer, so I think it was useful to have her as the as a kind of pre-reviewer.
And Glenn.
Yeah. Apologies for skipping out there. I don't have any particularly ideal suggestions. I was wondering about, like Ian, I was wondering about someone more from the sort of animal epi side. So I was wondering, what do you think about Graham Smith, Ian, at AFA? You're muted.
Sorry, I was typing, so I'm muted.
Yeah.
I don't know him very well, I've got to admit.
I mean, some of the people we had for the modelling paper might be relevant here. Do you think, Valerie? Because
yeah.
I was thinking maybe I was looking at, I think at Joel Smith.
Joel, I don't know Joel. Do you mean Joel Miller?
Miller, sorry. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting my Smiths.
Okay, pop the name in the chat. That'd be great. Pop the name in the chat. Lorenzo, had a think?
Unfruitful.
Oh, we're definitely going to have to kind of rack our brains then.
The problem I have is that most modelers, I'm assuming, are completely swamped the same way we are in the UK.
Well, you're having to draw in personal favors in the sense that you have to think of people who think, oh, Lorenzo has asked me, yeah, I'll pass some useful comments over this. I mean, I absolutely get your point. I mean, there is this absolute problem with. I
mean, it also depends how high we want them to be. Like, I can think of many kind of high-profile people in the US, for example, but I don't think the US is put in a. Valerie, maybe someone from the INI meetings in 2015.
Yeah, I mean, we trawl all these things, hopefully.
Of course, yeah, I can imagine.
Yes, I mean, I suppose in general it's good to have not only UK referees, although, I mean, are there one or two in Europe for this one that might be better than the US? I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know really. I'm sorry, I've got another meeting at 11.
Yeah,
so I
sorry.
have to duck out any second.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're not going to go beyond this. I think to proceed to proceed with this, what I will do, I wanted to just get a consensus view on whether people were happy with the comments made and their response. So that's been really helpful. I will fold some of those comments in directly. And really, if people could give some thought to reviewers, I think that could be quite urgent for us. I'll also look at Alejandra's comments and think about that. One or two of you have said you'd send me the odd paragraph or sentence or two to flesh out. If you could do that, I think in the context of bringing out the life cycle model, the point that Hans made earlier in the paper in the life cycle modeling bit, or placing a reference forward in the paper to that section. So I've got some material just to insert, and then Ian said he would do something on that. If what I will do is I'm keeping this, I'd like to get this out certainly in the next few weeks, okay, a couple of weeks. Let's give ourselves no more time, get the thing submitted as is, if that's okay, or with a few changes that have been, because I was expecting more substantive potential corrections, reductions, elisions, and we haven't had that. So yeah, I think we just go, if people are happy to do with that. So I will keep a slot on a Thursday potentially available for the next couple of weeks, okay, and let you know if we're convening and when we're convening. Because about one or two notables haven't been able to make this meeting, perhaps because they're otherwise tied up and so on. Okay, are people happy with that way forward? Yeah. Okay. Thank you again, everyone. We're getting there. Has the estimation one been submitted? I didn't notice. And has the modelling one both been submitted?
No, neither, but I think both are very close.
Okay, that's interesting.
Glenn, what do you think? You should answer.
I think so too. I mean, my hope is we can get the modelling one in next week, and I think Ben's pretty close with that.
I think he's hoping something similar. So
okay, well, look, sounds like we're probably all on the same track, and I will scour for potential reviewers as well. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
The other people who are involved might also be able to suggest. Yeah. I mean, people who aren't on this call, yeah, there are one or two might make some suggestions.
So we'll endeavour to get this submitted within the next fortnight. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks again.
Bye.